Greetings and welcome back to Whole Soul School and Foundation's second Fireside Chat for the month of April. I'm here with my co-host Marie. Hi, Marie.
Hey, Lacey.
And our theme for this month, as you know, is the journey of transformation. You and I spoke about the journey of transformation in more general terms earlier in the month, and we discussed how change is often inevitable in our lives, but that personal transformation is often a choice that we can choose along the way.
Definitely.
And it's often a crisis of some sort that calls us into the option of personal growth.
Yes, when I think about life as a journey, I think about the different times in my life when I was called to change or transform because of an experience on that journey. And then I realized, Lacey, that the transformation is a journey in and of itself.
Yes, absolutely. And as we spoke of that journey in our previous podcast, we recommended to our listeners, if you remember, we recommended to our listeners to watch one of our favorite movies by Patrick Solomon called Finding Joe. Now, Marie, we chose this film because it is such a wonderful depiction of what the great philosopher and mythologist Joseph Campbell calls the hero's journey. And this is what we want to talk about today as it relates to our monthly theme, the journey of transformation.
And so, Lacey, I'd like to open our conversation today the same way that they open the story in Finding Joe. They tell the story of unearthing the golden Buddha. Mm-hmm. And Alan Cohen, he's an author and a speaker. Alan Cohen tells the story of a group of monks hundreds of years ago that had the statue of a golden Buddha. And it was something they revered and cherished and loved, but they knew it could be at risk for being stolen or plundered or decimated in some way and not honored in the way that they felt about the golden Buddha. So they came up with a plan to cover the golden Buddha in something nobody would ever suspect that there's a golden Buddha inside. And they covered it in clay, which over time became stone, right, over many, many years. And then, shrubs and plants and weeds and I'm sure all kinds of things grew over top of the golden Buddha. Until one day, a monk, many, many hundreds of years later, is going out to pray by the statue of the golden Buddha, the clay Buddha, the stone Buddha as it knew it to be. And he saw a crack in the stone covering of the Buddha. And when he looked inside, he saw this amazing golden light shining through the stone Buddha. And so, of course, as Alan Cohen shares in that brilliant story, that they uncovered the Buddha and saw that this was a magnificent golden statue of this Buddha. And it's not unlike our own experiences of unearthing our own golden Buddhas inside. And I just wanted to share a couple thoughts that Alan Cohen makes so well. He says how we each are golden. We each are born knowing. Each are born knowing truth, like the Buddha, like the Christ figures, like some of the master beings on the planet that have ascended to a certain level of consciousness where they join with the love consciousness and they understand that we're all connected. And so we are all born golden. We all are born knowing this. And then we are told what to do. We are exposed to our conditioning in our childhoods and our development until we believe that we are the stone Buddha. Right? We've completely covered up our light, our golden nature, our perfection. Until something, Lacey, of course, comes along in the form of a catalyst or something that creates a crack in the stone structure, the conditioned self, right? And it exposes the gold that we have inside. And what Alan Cohen says so brilliantly is that the armor and the concrete will never satisfy you again once you know what it is. So that all that you ever want to do for the rest of your life is to pick away the stone because the gold is so much more fun. And if you get any lessons from this film, which I have to say again and again through this podcast, people, it's a must watch. If you see no other film in your life and you're at some point in your life of recognizing that change is underway or change is on the horizon or some kind of shift in your life is happening, this is absolutely one of the most brilliant films that takes the work of Joseph Campbell and illustrates it in the most inspiring way. And I have personally had that experience that once there's a crack in the stone of your conditioning and your conditioned beliefs and the patterns inside you that haven't served you for some time, yet you're still living them out day after day after day. When something comes and puts a crack in that, whether it's financial stress, a health crisis, something happens that's challenging in your family. There are a myriad of stresses in our lives that could put a crack or a dent in that stone. Nothing does satisfy you, again, because you begin to see underneath all of that armor, underneath all of that stone, is truly the perfection that you are and the golden light that we all are, that we knew in the beginning, but that got covered over, just like the golden Buddha. So I love how Alan Cohen tells the story, how we're all unearthing that inside ourselves. And this film goes on to make a very compelling story and illustration that this is true for all of us. It's not just for some of us, not just a few, select beings who are chosen by some, magnificent God in the sky or something outside ourselves that are going to get this experience. This journey is here for all of us, and it's in all of our mythology, and we're going to talk more about that today. But I love that story. That's the opener of the film, and they carry that story through the rest of the film.
I'm always reminded when we sit here that really the purpose of Whole Soul School and Foundation is to help people uncover their golden Buddha, essentially their golden nature. I mean, it really is our purpose. We are on these podcasts and in our monthly themes really trying to help people understand that the life that they're living in large part is a conditioned life and they're covered in clay. Right. And the clay is all of the things that we're conditioned to believe and all of the things that make us who we think we are. But in fact, actually underneath all of that is a spiritual being, is a being with talents and abilities, is a being who has a purpose on the planet. And so, everything that we talk about here, every movie we see, every conversation we have is very much trying to help educate people, and help people gain self-awareness into their own journey of transformation. So This movie and the conversation today is no different. It's just a beautiful depiction of the journey, and it's Joseph Campbell's way of describing what we continue to describe at Whole Soul Foundation, School and Foundation. And
they depict in this film the journey that we're all on and invited to at some level.
Right.
And yes.
Right. So we'll talk about that, and I'm just going to get back a little bit for our listeners to describe the more the aspects of the film, kind of how the filmmakers lay it out, okay? So the film uses subject matter experts, teachers, and athletes to basically provide an overview of the journey that most of us are all on in life, right? It does a beautiful job of depicting some of the deeper psychological and spiritual concepts through the use of children playing roles and acting out the confronting of and overcoming of our fears, which is really
so powerful. It is.
And the expert commentary combined with that visual storytelling just provides such an enjoyable and inspiring and relatable message for all who are looking to become more self-aware about their own life journey. I just think that the filmmaker Patrick Solomon does a wonderful job with that.
Of bringing the story to life, where everybody in whatever experiences you're living right now. And those of us that are seeking some kind of deeper meaning, we can all relate to this film on some level. They speak to the soul in all of us.
Absolutely. And I think, we'll talk a little bit about the hero's journey itself next.
Okay.
And there's many, many sort of steps along the path of the hero's journey. But the big three steps, three phases, if you will, of the hero's journey are called the separation, the initiation or the call to adventure and the return.
That's
and
right.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the separation?
Well, separation really refers to our view of ourselves as separate from others. This belief keeps us operating from our conditioned self, because the conditioned self got created in the first place to protect us from the uncomfortable feelings of being separate. So this separation is all a part of how we express the way we were trained to be by the world outside of ourselves, our family, our school system, religion, the media, and the list goes on and on. There are so many systems that have, are in place in our global culture to condition us and get us oriented to the life we're about to live, which is one of being separated.
Right. And we spoke a lot about the conditioned self in the month of January.
Yes.
And so when we talk about that, we're really reiterating that. And of course, in the film, the concept of being separated, or the metaphor for the separation, is the clay over the Buddha here, right? Because it serves as a barrier. It covers and protects the gold. And while it keeps people out, it also keeps the good in. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So in the film, the phase of the separation really refers to how many people are living in this sort of hypnotic state that we've talked about. The media and other organized systems of control keep us in this sort of trance of consumerism, materialism, and we can't seem to get off of that treadmill, right?
Yes.
So I also see the media and these organized systems as working to keep us in a state of being afraid to thrive. So it's not just to be a consumer and to buy or whatever hypnotic state it's keeping us in. It's also not allowing us to thrive. And
it keeps us stuck in just trying to survive, which is, the opposite of thriving, right?
Right. And it leaves a lot of people feeling like a victim of their of their environment, a slave to the shoulds and should nots in their belief systems. And essentially, we're sort of lulled into adopting the dominant rules and values and beliefs of the masses. And so in this period of time of separation, we're disconnected from our golden self, right? Our talents, our skills, our abilities, our passions. And like you said, we're separated from ourself and from others and from a higher power.
Yeah, Lacey, so well said. Inside the Golden Buddha, inside all of us, is where all of those talents, passions, joys, all the things that bring up positive feelings inside us, they're in there.
Right.
They are definitely in there, but we have this conditioned layer, this clay and the stone on top of us, plus some weeds and some extra things that have grown on top of that over the many years, that would fool us or trick us into believing that that's
right.
all that we really are. So, so they're highlighting this separation as a core, one of the beginning, right?
This is kind of, it's really our state of existence until something comes along
to wake us up.
Okay.
And I wanted to say that Campbell talks about that underneath all of that, there is an impulse within us that wants to be actualized. That feeling that we can do better, be better, and that the future is the prospect of becoming that better self. They're really, really talking about that positive message throughout this film. So you can get stuck in the clay, like its own quicksand.
Well, you get stuck in the belief of it.
You get stuck, and that's
right?
what reinforces it. As long as you're believing it, it's going to be there.
Right. Right, exactly. And that impulse you're talking about, I think, is an impulse that remains buried until there's some kind of crisis or catalyst that calls us and sometimes forces us to face the things in ourselves that are blocking us from becoming that better self. Right. So we have this inner impulse that's in there. It's kind of vibrating inside of us. It's that golden light that's underneath all the clay.
Yes.
But we don't really acknowledge it, recognize it, or engage it.
Embrace
it often until some kind of crisis or catalyst comes into our life.
And this is exactly, Lacey, what Joseph Campbell describes as the call to adventure or the initiation. That's the second phase of the hero's larger journey that we're all making. So for many of us, this is a call to face some kind of adversity in our life, a crisis, a trauma, an unexpected experience that requires us to tap into our internal resources. Again, tapping into the golden Buddha that has the resources way deep inside, which are our strengths, our intuition, and our ability to think outside of the box. Whatever it is here to upend you.
Oh, that's so powerful. So let's just say that again, the catalyst or the adverse experience that presents itself in our life is here to upend us. And that may seem really scary to a lot of people. But the truth is it's here it's inviting us to grow. It's inviting our golden nature, our skills, our strengths, our talents, our ability to think outside the box, our intuition. It's inviting that to come forward. And I think in the Buddha metaphor, it's kind of inviting, it's sort of the chisel and the hammer that breaks open the clay, right? So whatever the situation is, it's going to look challenging at face value, and it's going to feel scary, and it's going to require courage, and it's going to require us to take responsibility for embracing a new perspective, generating new problem-solving skills, and moving through a crisis through transformation. It's going to require us to transform either part of ourself or all of ourself in order to not just get through it, but to really metamorphosize and change ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, the golden Buddha is very different. If you look, if it was looking in the mirror, it looks very different than the stone Buddha.
Right.
I mean, completely two different versions of itself. Right.
Right. So Campbell calls it a call to adventure. And I think that may seem like the wrong word to some people, especially when facing a serious crisis. They're not thinking that their serious crisis is an adventure.
Right. But remember, I don't know if you were going to say this, Lacey, but it's like what we wrote about in the newsletter for Whole Soul School and Foundation for this month. If anybody's listening to this and wants to go to our website, you can now see it all in one place. And I wrote about this, the call to adventure. I wrote about this in our newsletter. This theme this month took me back to a story. I think we mentioned it earlier in the Fireside chat, the first of the month, but I'll say it again. There's the story of going on a bear hunt. And it's this family, and in this cute, playful children's story that is foreshadowing some of the hero's journey if people are paying attention. And it's a great story if you have young children to introduce it to them, because it's a great story even for the very young, where we're going to go on an adventure. We're going on a journey. We're going on a bear hunt. And they're very excited about it. But there's all these snafus and all these challenges and obstacles waiting to block their path. And this film, Finding Joe, would say that is exactly when you know that you're about to break into something new, something better. So it looks like an obstacle. It looks insurmountable. It looks unrecoverable. It looks unhealable, unsolvable, all those unwords, right? Just unmanageable in some way that is basically telling the stone version of ourselves, the stone Buddha, it's unmanageable to that version of you. But to the golden Buddha, it can do anything. It can transcend anything. It can transform anything, because inside all of us, we have those skills. That's where all the hidden talents live. And so it's very powerful. It's definitely phase in the journey, and it's often missed. Because most of us, when something comes to crack our code, to crack our stone Buddha, to crack our defenses, to crack that armor, we think it's a terrible thing because the armor's getting cracked, right?
Well, and we're not even thinking that it's cracking the armor because we don't even know we have the armor. So, we are viewing whatever this adversity is, or this challenge, or this catalyst as bad, negative, challenging, scary.
And something we want to push through and either ignore or deny or avoid, and like that children's story, they make it very clear. We can't go over it. We can't go under it. We can't go around it. geez, I think we have to go through it. Right. And they say it over and over and over in this children's story as a mantra almost. That's the way I always felt the story. And I feel that very true in Joseph Campbell's depiction of the hero's journey, that he studied mythology extensively. And all of the stories that we love, all of the stories that we grow up either watching movies or reading in books, reading the classics. They say I'm reminded of The Wizard of Oz and Dorothy, who, goes through this entire process where she's whisked away to this foreign land and she has to face all these challenges and the scary lion and this wicked witch and all these obstacles, and the sleepy poppies, I think, are in that movie,
and the
right?
Scary monkeys.
And the scary monkeys that always terrified me as a child. I mean, to this day, I think I'm sweating just talking about the monkeys. So, but she's called, and they say this in the film, that she's called to tap into her inner resources. And when it's time to go home, what does Dorothy do? She clicks her heels together. And I think somehow the message in that movie is she had the tools inside her to go home the whole time.
Right.
This is exactly illustrating the hero's journey. This is exactly showing us the golden Buddha that existed in Dorothy. But it's not just in film. It's not just in the movies. It's going on inside all of us. And all the world cultures all over the globe and all of these centuries were trying to almost leave us little roadmaps, leave us clues in their stories, leave us clues in the pictures on the cave walls, leave us clues in the things that got passed down generation to generation to generation. And we still love these stories. We still, because we all resonate with us, because we, at some level, even to our listeners who are saying, all right, about the golden Buddha, but it's true. We all have this inside us. And I would say, who doesn't love the movie Star Wars? Who doesn't identify with Luke, who's wrestling with light and shadow and realizing that his, and once I don't want to give away any spoilers here, but realizing that he's got some connection with Darth Vader, and he's got to go through the swamp. He's got to go through the journey. He can't go around the swamp. He can't go over the swamp. He has to go through it. And so Luke Skywalker and the Star Wars films and Darth Vader, that's the hero's journey. Who doesn't
Harry Potter
recognize it in Harry Potter
yeah.
and the Voldemort journey, where, in the end, I think Dumbledore says a lot of amazing one-liners, but it's not, I don't know, what was it? It's not the experiences of our lives that make us who we are. It is our choices. Is that how that quote
Something
goes?
like that.
Something like that. The point is he's making it's our choices that define who we are, not necessarily the experiences we have or the conditionings we've had or who we've been up to this point. And so we always have the power of choice. And this is important. I just want to say one more thing. I don't know if you want to talk about more characters. There's plenty more stories out there for any of us to tap into this hero of those stories.
I think what's important, too, with all the ones you've mentioned is that in the end, the hero is the hero, but who the hero is fighting is actually the parts of themselves.
Correct.
Right? The parts of themselves that they disown, or the parts of themselves that they fear, or the parts of themselves they don't want to understand or listen to or see. And we've talked about that in our shadow and light conversations. So
exactly.
I think...
Well, and I think they're making this point in the film that where there might be other teachers that people listen to from time to time, and those teachers are talking about sometimes we're encouraged to not spend our energy and time looking back at the past or looking at patterns or looking at our pain. So, there's different philosophies on this. But in our experience, it's the hero's journey, much like Joseph Campbell's talking about. And this is the crux of Campbell's work, and this is the crux of Finding Joe. They're actually talking to listeners who resonate with these messages, that it is going into those pain. It's pushing through the scariest things that we can imagine sometimes, that are what brings out the golden Buddha the best. And so, none of us set out in our lives to have these terrifying, scary, stressed out to the max experiences. No one's thinking that when they're a young child. But in fact, life will bring at some level of stress, some level of challenge, some obstacle that we each have to overcome in our own unique ways. And only we have that, Excalibur, right? King Arthur and his sword. Only we have that ability inside us to pull the sword from the stone.
So what I think, let me, if I can bring it back around, because this is a really nice segue to this call to adventure. I think what we're also saying is how important it is to embrace life and all its challenges as an adventure. And if we embrace every experience as an adventure that we embark on to learn and grow, then no experience has to take us down.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And it reminds me, Lacey, of the men you worked with in prison. Their call to adventure was a prison sentence that they had to face.
Oh, yes. And they could either face it with a great amount of dread and fear, or they could face
resistance.
it, or resistance,
Right.
or they could face it with a sense of openness, viewing it as an adventurous experience. And some who may be listening may really be kind of scoffing or whatever at what we're saying, but I know this. I have lived this.
Yes.
Where how important it is to face whatever it is you need to face with courage, with a sense of adventure, and with the openness and willingness to grow through it. And that's what transforms us. And remember, that's our conversation this month.
And that's where I think you may have said this earlier in the podcast, but again, where change is inevitable, but transformation is a choice. And so we're all faced with challenges. And some of us, over time, when we realize we have this stone self, covering who we really are, can embrace the opportunity when a challenge or obstacle faces us to really want to grow through that experience and to really want to face, I think you're a sailor, Lacey, right? Somewhere in your background is and in your family's history is spending time on the water and sailing through some storms. And that's another metaphor for this hero's journey. And maybe you want to say, because I never seem to understand it fully, but when you're out on the water and a storm comes, what do you need to do?
You head into the wind. You head into the wind. And if you point your bow straight into the wind, it neutralizes the strength of the storm, essentially.
And
it helps you move forward.
And for non-sailors like me, I can say that, when the wind is battering your boat all over the place, right? I mean, I can feel that at least, even if I haven't spent a lot of time on the water like you have. You can feel the wind just pummeling you in a storm. And the tendency would be to want to run away from the storm, right? To get away from the storm, just try to outrun it. And it's the same thing as the children's book. It's the same thing of the journey of personal transformation. You're never going to outgrow the challenge that has your name on it. There is
Say it again, sister.
There is nowhere to go. There's nowhere to hide. There's no way to avoid. When it's time for something in your hero's journey to turn and face and put your boat into the wind, that it's only when we do that, it's only when we turn and face the wind that the calm and the peace can restore itself, because you're no longer being pushed and pulled all over the place by that very challenge, that obstacle. And so, Lacey, I don't know if you want to just say a couple more words, and I know you have...
Well, I wanted to bring us just back a little bit to the call to adventure so we can move into the third phase.
But I wanted you as a sailor to just bring that metaphor. That's not quite in the film, but we're taking this moment. I just wanted you to recap that for people who can feel that, because I, again, have never spent a whole lot of time on the water, but I know, and I've seen anybody, is it White Squall? Has anybody seen that
You're
film?
scaring me now.
Okay. But in a storm like that, right? And what did they do? I mean, they were crazy, but I think they go into the center of the storm.
I think what's so amazing about hearing you talk about something that you don't know very much about is that when you really get into the energy of it, you can feel the truth of it, whether you've ever had the experience or not.
Absolutely.
And really, what you were talking about is when you are on the water and you are in the midst of a storm, and I've been in many storms, you drop your sails and you face the boat into the storm. So, and that's the metaphor here.
And what happens to the boat? Does it come to a complete calm? Does it come?
No, I mean, you've still got waves battering, the boat's bouncing and you've got that going on, but you are safe and grounded and secure as you face the wind, because the wind doesn't have the power to blow your boat over right? That's the whole point, is that if you're not facing the wind is filling your sails and it's going to tip your boat over.
Right.
If you're not facing the wind and your sails are down, the waves are going to tip your boat over because you're going horizontally.
Right.
So you've got to face the wind, you face the waves, and the boat breaks it.
Correct. And by turning and facing the wind, and I promise our listeners that we're going to get back, but I get so engaged in the energy because I know this feeling, because I have faced my own storm. I have faced some gale force winds in my life, and I was not out on the water. I was in my own life experiencing some very, very hard times. And I connect with that feeling. And I was going to say, when you turn and face the wind, the power of those storms, right, which can rip a boat to shreds, when you turn and face it, you recover your own power, and it creates a kind of balance.
You got it. Yes.
Right? The challenge does not have power over you anymore.
Right.
And so you restore your own inner power. You're calling up your inner resources, and it requires you to turn and face the wind. And that is so important. They're talking about this in the Finding Joe's film, and they definitely, Joseph Campbell was highlighting this for many people to see. We don't turn and run away from the conflict and the adversity. We actually turn and we eventually grow. I'm going to say we do grow to appreciate that we know that it's taking us to a better place. It's taking us to a higher place if we can begin to recognize it for the beginners on the journey and the beginners of expanding their consciousness to this language. And for those of us already in it, there just sometimes are more storms, but now we know what to do. Okay, now we know what to do when the storm comes.
I'm sitting here smiling because I'm thinking, man, Patrick Solomon should have interviewed you for that film. Even though you're not a sailor, you had that metaphor down.
I feel it.
I know. And it's so true, Marie. I mean, both you and I, we talk about this a lot. So it's really about that any adversity and challenge that we face, any storm that comes our way, it's come our way and it's asking us, it's inviting us, it's calling us to step into the adventure of facing whatever it is we have to face so that we have to grow.
Yes.
And I think, what's important here with respect to the hero's journey is that, number one, we stay open to all experiences. We stay open to every experience as an adventure. We understand that adversity is an opportunity for personal growth and for transformation, right? I mean, it's all a perspective.
Yeah.
Number three, that we learn to take responsibility for embracing the possibilities in each present moment, right?
There's a lot of power in the present moment.
That's right. You take that power back. And number four, that we have a willingness to face our inner demons in order to move forward in our adventure and learn from all that we experience.
Exactly. And there's a lot in those four things that you just said. But at some point, Lacey, in this adventure, when we grow through and we open to all of those things and we turn and face the wind and we turn and face the obstacles, right? We realize that we are the hero of our own journey. When Harry Potter didn't recognize himself as a wizard and he just thought he was meant to live in this tiny little place under the stairs, right?
Right.
That's what he thought his little world was about. He didn't realize there was this greatness inside him when he was in the stone encasement of that little bedroom he had under the stairs. And there are many characters like that. And how many of us are living that, right? How many of us are living these small little lives? But we are the hero of our own journey when we begin just to awaken to the crack in that stone. And so there's a great scene in the film where a knight is tasked with slaying a dragon, which is later revealed to be his own self, Lacey, his own ego. This dragon that he was chasing or running away from in the many scenes in this film, it actually what it turns out to be is that it's later revealed that he's facing himself.
Right.
He's facing his own fears, his own demons, his own obstacles that look like it was trying to get the best of him, to try and defeat him. But it's his own self. It's probably, at some level, Lacey, it's the golden Buddha rising up inside that says, I will be small and stone no more, right? Right? You can't, I will no longer allow myself to play small.
Right.
and to not know who I really am. And so it is only after this that he can go on and become the amazing being he is meant to be, this character in the story, in the film. And they do such a great job in the Finding Joe story of like allowing me, like, inserting these like nuggets of wisdom, these like deep illustrations of just beautiful imagery, and the experts in the film just have clearly lived aspects of the hero's journey themselves. You have no doubt that they have grown through some of these things themselves. And then they have this band of characters that weave through the story, Lacey, right? These kids that are telling the story of the Golden Buddha and this dragon that has to be faced to get back to the Golden Buddha. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, it is.
It's extraordinary.
And I think probably one of the last comments I want to make in this particular phase of the journey, and then we'll move to the last phase, but is the concept of fear and courage. Fear is an inherent part of the human experience, and we have to move forward in our life in spite of fear. I love the quote, "Do the things that scare you. Courage is what comes afterwards."
So
right?
True. It's so true.
So just to review, Campbell talks about this common experience of living in a state of separation until we receive a call to adventure. And this call may be subtle or it may be loud, but regardless, we are called to face ourselves through this adversity and through a challenge, and to tap into our inner resources, like you so well illustrated, and move through the difficult experience, and all the while transforming ourselves to be that better version of ourselves, which is this journey of transformation. We're transforming to be the better version of ourselves.
Right. And like we just said a few minutes ago, that knight that's trying to slay the dragon in the end is calling himself out.
Right.
Calling his demons out, calling his fears out. And really we're not slaying ourselves at all. We're trying to set ourselves free.
Yes.
Right? The Buddha wanted to be set free.
Right.
Right? It had been encased for a very long time, and it was just time to break out of that. So, and yes, and now we move into the part of the journey that Joseph Campbell calls the return, right, Lacey? So there's the separation, there's the call to adventure and initiation, and then there's the return. And this is when we, the hero of our own journey, bring back the story and the lessons that we have learned about ourselves, the skills that we acquired as we faced and transformed through the journey. And I would say when we face the wind, Lacey, when we turned and faced the wind, we have to turn and face the wind. We can't go around it. And we bring that back. The inner resources we had to call up to turn and face the wind, that's what we bring back. And that's what we share with others. And these things have now become a part of us because it's lived experience.
Yes.
Right? It's a lived experience, which is what many people call knowledge. It's knowing yourself. And until we go through a journey like this, we're living someone else's life as ourselves. We're living kind of this imposter-like life in disguise as our own stone Buddhas until we're called to the task of this amazing journey. If we accept the challenge, if we accept the rise in consciousness inside ourselves, that something great is on the other side of this struggle or this difficulty in our lives in some way, that we acquire those skills only by going through the journey as a lived experience, and then we want to bring it to others. It becomes a part of us, part of our transformed selves that we now want to share with others so that others can learn too, so that we can activate other people to value the journey as well, to understand that it's not a series of random acts, random incidences, just a series of bad luck things that we all go through, that it's just not this just series of challenges that we go through from birth until death when we die. And then we have a couple little, I've said this before, these little sprinklings in our life, as if there's just these tiny little moments of goodness and a whole lot of challenge. When you realize that every challenge was there, and sometimes they come back for us because those challenges, remember, have our name on them. They're things that our particular spirit or our wiser self wants us to learn, right? when we realize the gifts that's inside that challenge, we face them differently. I think it's why I like the metaphor facing the wind, Lacey, because I have learned without being a sailor that in my own life, when storms come up emotionally or physically or financially or whatever storms I might face still today, that I recognize I know how to get in position in my boat. I know how to face the wind, and I know the value of doing that. Versus I could have chosen a lot of other paths to complain about it, to cry about it, to suffer about it, to struggle with it. I know as soon as that's coming my way, I know now, after some lived experiences, I know how to get in position so I can center myself in my boat. I turn and face the wind. I know I'm going to go through it. I value that I'm going to go through it. And there's going to be some kind of inner resource that I don't have right now that I'm going to get by going through that experience. And they illustrate that so incredibly well in this film. I have to say, I love all the films that we've talked about so far, and I'm going to love a lot of the films that we're still going to cover. But Finding Joe particularly resonates with me in my life because I've been through it a few times, and I'm still going through it. We're not immune to storms.
Well, and
We're not immune to storms.
I agree 100%. I'm just as enthusiastic about the film as you are. I mean, because we've been through it. We are examples of this lived experience you're talking about. And just sitting here talking to you and having this podcast and creating Whole Soul School and Foundation, guess what we're doing? We're on our return. We are sharing.
Exactly.
We are sharing everything that we learned. Everything that we talk about on Whole Soul School and Foundation is from lived experience.
I love that. Whole Soul School and Foundation is the return.
It's our return.
It's our return.
It's where we're sharing what we have learned through our many calls of adventures over the last 27 years. I know I'm a little teary myself.
Yes.
So it's very, this concept of the hero's journey is something that I love to teach. I love to, it has so much value. And I think that the last concept I want to talk about, because we really do need to round this out, is the concept of...
I wanted you to talk about the 3 things that change is possible.
Well, you sort of covered that when we come back in the return phase and we've had our adventure, we're coming back to not just bring our stories.
Yes.
We're coming back to share our lessons. And 3 of the most important things that I have found to teach is, number 1, that change and transformation is absolutely possible. And you're talking to the girl who worked in deep, dark federal prison and watched men embrace this journey. And I watched men transform their darkness to light in a place of darkness to a place in light of themselves. And
to come back through that separation experience and to come through that call to adventure that, of course, they weren't thinking it was that at the time.
Right.
But they were in the initiation phase to do the work to go through that journey and to come home in the return themselves. And that's what our podcast Transformation Talks is about.
Yes.
It's a lot of those men telling their stories.
Yes.
So if anybody's listening...
part of their return, right?
It's part of their return is to come and to share it. They're amazing how generous they are in sharing their stories. Not everybody would want to do that, but when you're on the return, you want to share your wisdom and your knowledge from lived experience with others to provide a few breadcrumbs for the people who are just beginning that journey, that change is possible.
Yes.
That they can overcome anything.
Yes.
That you are just like them and you can get to that place like them if you embrace the story and the journey that's inviting you now. So, and then we have to have the courage to face those inner demons inside us.
Right.
And there's no way out but through.
Right. Boy, we're pulling everything we've talked about so far. I love it, over the last 4 months.
Yes.
When we talk. So there is one last concept that's probably Joseph Campbell's sort of signature saying and belief, which is follow your bliss. He really coined that phrase, decades ago. And he believed that if you follow your bliss is listening to your heart. It's following your truth. The thing that you can't not do, your authentic self, your authentic journey, and trusting your deep impulse within yourself. So following your bliss is sort of a mechanism, if you will, or a technique in a way, kind of like a belief. I mean, you can look at it in a lot of different ways, but it's a thread.
Trust the passion inside you to lead you through the dark moments.
Yes.
And he has a deep faith in that because he studied the mythology through all centuries of time. And he's there helping to guide us in the story that Joseph Campbell told so well, that Finding Joe is inviting us and illustrating for us that it's a follow your instincts, trust your passion, trust the truth to lead you from the inside out, trust your inner Buddha is communicating with you. And you will go through a few tunnels and hallways along the way. You're going to go through some unexpecteds and some twists and turns, because those are all part of the things that we build. And if it was a straight line from unconsciousness to consciousness, from unself-awareness to full self-awareness, everybody would be making it.
Yeah.
Everybody would do it. There would be no journey to even be talking about on this podcast.
Right.
The reason it's so extraordinary is that it's the road less traveled.
Yes. Yes. Right? And magical things happen when you take the leap and follow your bliss. And we know that more than anybody because we've taken a lot of leaps. We're in the middle of a big leap right now in our life.
Yes.
And
Another one.
And what are we doing right now is we're following our bliss by talking, by conversing, by sharing the wisdom. And clearly you can, I don't know about you, but I always feel the passion when we talk. We are following our bliss of wanting to mentor, teach, guide, help, support, share, etc. So,
yes.
So we could probably have a whole nother podcast on the concept of follow your bliss.
Can you just, I know you have this little section. Can you just read through that quickly? That our bliss right now, like you were just saying, is when we turn this light on in other people. And for some people, they have to go back and find it because they've closed the door on it because it wasn't accepted. We've pushed it away. And when we're pushing it away, but we're in the hero's journey, we're beginning to understand we're in the hero's journey, we look for our talents and we go back and we look for them. We're willing to listen inside. Where are they? What are they? And when you follow your bliss, the universe will open doors where there once were only walls. Was that a Joseph Campbell phrase?
Probably.
It feels very Joseph Campbell-y.
Yeah.
So I believe that was his. That the universe will open doors where there were once only walls. And that unseen forces have the power to rearrange things, some stepping stones for you to go to the next level. So when you can't see a way out, when you can't figure out how you're going to get there, when you trust and you step into this bigger process and you journey with a grain, a grain of sand's worth of faith, the stepping stones do appear. And why don't people follow it? Because they're afraid they are afraid to face their fear. There's like the boogeyman in the closet. We just don't want to look at those things. And therefore we stay in the stone structure. We stay in our stone Buddha and we stay living small. And Joseph Campbell would even say not living fully alive, right? So it's not always a pretty process, right, Lacey? But magical things, as you were saying, do happen when we take this leap and we follow our bliss, which is Joseph Campbell. If you take nothing away from his work, is the story of the Golden Buddha and the message of following our bliss and being willing to tunnel through the things that are challenges to get to the other side. Always the choice is yours, the easy path or the challenging path, right, Lacey? Everyone has choices every single day, right? We can play small or we can step into our authentic selves. And stepping into our authentic selves is going to put you smack dab in the hero's journey. Because to be authentic in a world that's filled of conditioned beliefs and conditioned patterns and conditioned expectations, you stand out.
Right.
Amen. You stand out.
Yeah.
But the Golden Buddha is saying, fine, let me shine.
Right.
Let me shine. Give me the chance. Let me shine.
Right.
And so Finding Joe, Lacey, right, invites the question.
Can we all be exceptional? Why not find out?
Right.
While your individual journey may not be epic, the invitation of the hero's journey can be useful for initiating and sustaining transformation in your life.
Yes.
And I think that's really sort of where we can end this and bring it around. And I would just really encourage anybody listening to watch this film. We watch it over and over again in our house, and it's inspiring and it's motivating and it's a reminder of who we really are. And it's a reminder that change is good, that transformation is powerful, possible, and limitless.
I would agree. And I know we're closing out this podcast, but I want to say they make this point at the end of the film that the hero's journey is not a once and done.
Right.
You don't go through the cycle of these stages that they outline in the film very brilliantly, but even still, from what we've shared with our listeners today, if you have not seen the film, it's worth checking out. You can go see the trailer. We've put links in several places, and I'll put the link again in the description section of this video and the podcast. But, we go through the journey and we come back through the return, and amazingly, guess what? There's a new level of separation that we're going to go through, a new level of being called to another adventure, new levels of learning are going to take place, and we're going to return again. So it's something, and once you realize that it's a cycle, it's a circle, and we're not going in a circle like chasing our tail. We're going in a circle of deeper and deeper layers inside us where we just become better and better versions of ourselves. And I think that's why Lacey and I get so excited about transformation. I'll speak for myself, is that I know I'm always growing. I'm always learning. There's always something new to expand into or to try on or to let go of. And this film, Finding Joe, just inspires me over and over again. And when I get away from it and I'm going through a challenge or I'm going on that bear hunt and there's an obstacle and look at what we have to go through now, I understand. I recognize all the signs. I know the map now from my lived experience. I recognize and I say, oh, we're about to grow here. What an exciting opportunity.
Well, and I got to go back to the boat and the storm because you got me in that now. But it's like you can see the storm clouds coming. You know how many times I've been in the middle of the ocean.
Doesn't sneak up on you.
Doesn't sneak up on you. You see the storm clouds coming. You can feel the wind picking up, right? And now you've got to prepare and you've got to know your next steps. Right. And you've got to embrace it. You have to embrace it. Exactly. And I think that comes with time and experience, that when you go through this and you have the tools, that's what Whole Soul School and Foundation is trying to do, is to give people a little bit of a language that they might have experienced in their life before you might have found us somewhere on our website or in our social media platforms. But we're trying to give you the language that everyone goes through this. Everyone is going through this at some level in their life right now, today. Whether they're the stone Buddha that doesn't know they're the golden Buddha at all, or whether they've got cracks in their armor and cracks in the stone, and they're just beginning to have an inkling that there's something deeper in there, or whether you're somebody who's been chiseling yourself out for a little while. We hope to be a voice to affirm that you're doing it. You're doing an amazing job, and the willingness to I think what we were talking about, Alan Cohn in the very beginning. Once you see that crack, once you're aware that the golden Buddha is there, there's no going back.
Right, there's no going back, and that armor in the concrete will never satisfy you again. And I can say, for someone who's been around that circle a few times already, and I'm probably going to go a couple more cycles before this life is complete, it doesn't satisfy me. Yeah. The armor just isn't satisfying. And
it's because the gold, you've now seen the gold, you've tasted the gold, you know the gold, and there's no going back because the gold is so much better. And so you will spend time chipping away at all of that clay and that armor so that you can live from the golden place.
And Joseph Campbell, I want to say this one quote that I didn't get to earlier in this conversation, but Joseph Campbell says, he opens the film, they open the film with this quote, "I don't believe people are looking for the meaning of life as much as they are looking for the experience of being alive." And when you realize that everything in your life is designed as that adventure, and that adventure is what brings the meaning of being, the experience of being alive to you. The stone Buddha, it doesn't have a lot of life force. It's pretty stiff, it's pretty rigid, and it's filled with armor. And it was designed, of course, in that story to protect it and to keep people from seeing its light. But there's a time that we reemerge, And I'm just saying, I think that there's this beautiful point when we can start to recognize that, and these calls to adventure and these summonings that we have in our lives are really these beautiful stepping stones to a higher version of ourselves. And you're not going to know what that is until you go through it.
Right.
And that is, to me, the journey of personal transformation is the lived experience of the change we're wanting to become. It's really beautiful.
It is.
Love
so
this
hopefully,
film.
I know.
You
And
guys
it
have to
really
see
it's like
this film.
bring it on, bring on the adventure, because there's so much
Right.
gold to be mined.
And you can go and you can support this amazing filmmaker, Patrick Solomon, who made Finding Joe on his website. Again, I'll put the link in our videos and on our podcasts and on our website. You'll see that there. But check it out. The trailer alone is worth 5 minutes to experience just some of this energy that they put forth in this film and telling the story that I think we can all resonate with. I want to say thank you to our listeners. Thank you, Lacey, for this awesome conversation today.
Thank you.
Thank you I just want to say a shout out to Sam, our web developer. She's awesome, and she's been working with us for many months to bring Whole Soul School and Foundation's full website into form. We're just about working out all of the kinks. We're very close, but the website is there. It's open for you to come and listen to our conversations in a myriad of forms. If you're a podcast person, those files and audio files are there. If you're a video person or you like our vlogs, you can listen to us there. We have our posted blogs that some of you might have been missing that really lay the template of what we've been sharing about since January of this year. And I don't think there's anywhere to access our newsletter except for signing up for it. So if you sign up for our newsletter, you can it even gives you an opportunity, if you're signed up for the newsletter, to go back into the archives of our newsletter. So somehow that is an invitation and a summoning to you to go deeper into Whole Soul School and Foundation, to share your email address with us so that you can receive the forecast each month of what's coming up, what films we're going to be talking about, and you can hear how you can support the work that we're doing. We have twofold. We have a mission that's twofold, and when you support us and you tune into our conversations, and those that have been generous donators and supporters, we are so grateful for every donation, because over time, we are hoping to be able to create some of these materials and some of this content that will go to support people whose lives were directly impacted by incarceration, by literally manifesting an incarceration experience and the hero's journey that goes along with that. And we want to be a voice of hope and healing and integration and possibility for people who've had that experience as well. So when you come and you spend time with us and you donate to us, that's part of the larger change and positive impact you can have in the world by supporting the work that we're doing here. So check us out on Facebook. We have reminders for the soul twice a week, and little things that you can share on your page that are positive and uplifting and usually relate to the film that we've debuted for the month, and definitely our theme and our topic. So we got lots of things cooking here at Whole Soul School and Foundation. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your light. We appreciate your positive energy. Please feel free to leave comments on YouTube, and I don't know if you can on Buzzsprout. I'll have to look at that, but please participate with us. If you have questions or you'd like to see certain things covered, there's a way to email us and send us your information, send us your questions. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So we're learning and growing along with you. So, we're just a little seedling, and we're sprouting our wings. So thanks for spending time with us today, and thanks for giving the journey of personal transformation some energy in your day. And we look forward to our next conversation next month. So blessings to all, and have a great week.